Hello again, Richard. Now, do any guests worry about people knowing what they do?
Well, yeah, I guess every month somebody phones up and says, love to come, but we're terrified we'll meet someone we know. And I have to say to them, well, why would you be terrified? Because they're here as well as you being here. What about some throwaway line like, I knew you guys had a twinkle in your eye. I'm not surprised to find you in a place like this. So who's going to be embarrassed? We can get real guys. That's the friend side covered. But perhaps more worrying amongst people is their employers finding out. Now, before one of the many documentaries we've done for television, Janet got very nervous that her employers, the erstwhile NHS, might fire her for being connected with an adult documentary. It was a thing about John Richardson. And without telling her, I wrote to her HR department and praised them for trailblazing the area of sexual tolerance, expecting that to continue across all forms of sexual tolerance. And by the way, our particular sexual preference is absence of monogamy. And when Janet went to work, she was called into HR office, not knowing I'd written this letter. Had the letter in front of them, and they said, your partner is absolutely right. The NHS will not tolerate any persecution on any sexual basis. So we need you to report to us, Janet, anyone who makes you feel uncomfortable about being on that broadcast, and we will discipline them. I've still got a copy of that letter if people need it, but the law says you cannot be disadvantaged for your sexual preferences, and what goes on here is entirely legal, so it falls into that range. So stop worrying and come on down and enjoy yourself. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Lastly, Richard, how do you reconcile swinging with religious beliefs?
Oh, wow. I guess you'll want less than a 3-hour answer to that. Briefly, my own religious convictions are of Christianity. I come at it through the mind and issues of a physicist rather than the nurse or somebody who loves people a lot. To my mind, 10 to the power of 125 electrons cannot appear by themselves in Big Bang. I have to express surprise that my schoolmate Stephen Hawking doesn't come to the same conclusion I did. But there has to be a creative intelligence behind all that happening. So those are my convictions. As we say on the forms, truthfully, we go to church regularly. Regularly as clockwork, we come once a year. I think the word they meant to use was frequently. We got on very well with our church. The local press tried to make an issue of swinging versus the church. When the lovely vicar came round and chatted to me after she said, Radlett's now famous for all the wrong reasons from the pulpit. And we got on very well, and we've had long theological discussions with the vicar. But if you stand back and look at the 3 great monotheisms, they all base their guidance for living on a tract. We've got the Torah, we've got the Quran, we've got the Bible. And in the times when these were written, to be able to write, you had to be very well educated and very old, therefore wise. And these guys who made the word real in the 3 monotheisms had to bring common sense and wisdom into their whatever they wrote. There's early burials in the Jewish state. There's absolute ownership of women in the Quran. And I believe it is a 4th monotheism. Because education is so widespread, the next writers of the next tome would be young people. And sex would be nothing like the prohibited activity that has seeped through the wise old people who've written the primary tracts. So we have that issue of how the tracts have come out, and then parallel with that issue is the issue of inerrancy. There are some people in America who believe that the first human beings were actually called Adam and Eve, because the Bible says that. However, when Pope Damasus convened the Council of Rome in AD 382 to try and convene one canon of the Bible, there was a mindset going around which got embedded in the Bible. There's a lot of misogyny in there. Everything where women had done anything famous was downgraded. Mary Magdalene comes through as a prostitute, whereas in fact that was not the case. And inerrancy, to my mind, is dead in the water when you look at the issues of female bishops. God didn't change his mind in 1950, suddenly deciding that females are up to this task. It was all down to interpretation, so inerrancy cannot apply. Now, if inerrancy cannot apply, we're back to the two sentences which are central to Christianity. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and treat your neighbour as yourself. The rest is not exactly froth, but it's supporting structures of those two sentences. So what is swinging all about? Which key tenet does it contradict in proper religion? Well, loving thy neighbour isn't a problem, insofar as if you're going to have a sensible interpretation of adultery at all, it's a disrupting of a functional pair bond, and the opposite happens here. Pair bonds do not get destroyed here, they get created. This is not the kind of place where you would see people exchanging furtively phone numbers behind what's going on. So I'm not seeing any need to reconcile swinging with Christianity. It's covered in all that I've said therefore. We're still welcome in the church, they love us to pieces, and very non-judgmental, and that's how we are, non-judgmental. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Richard.